The second matchday of Copa Libertadores 2024 is already history, and this is how the tables of all the groups look like. And here in Ranked Talks Ball we're gonna predict all the round 3 matches of the Copa Libertadores 2024. Cerro Porteño played yet another terrible game of football. But unlike last time where the football gods punished them by having them concede in the last minute, this time they were the ones to win it in the end of the game, as Pachi Carrizo broke the hearts of Alianza Lima. Fluminense also showed yet another pale performance. They took an early lead against Colo-Colo, but the Chilean team quickly equalized. And yes, Cano got the winner for Fluminense, but their play still looks a bit sus. And if it wasn't for Fabio and a handball in the build-up to the play that led to the 2-2 by Colo-Colo, they wouldn't have won this game. Even then, if Fluminense find even a little bit of the form that they had last year, they should be able to beat this Cerro Porteño team, who have been pretty poor in this tournament so far. So with some doubts, I'll give the win to Fluminense. Colo-Colo played a great game at the Maracaná. Yes, they conceded early, but almost immediately from a corner, Paiva found an equalizer. Fluminense was attacking, but it wasn't like they were barriering the Chilean team against their own goal. And if it wasn't for Germán Cano's header, I don't know how Fluminense would have been able to break through. Colo-Colo could have made it 2-2 with a shot from Vidal that was stopped by Fabio, and a shot from Damián Pizarro which went over the crossbar. But despite their great effort, they didn't get the point they deserved. Similar case to Alianza Lima, who decided to match Cerro Porteño's pragmatic approach. They almost didn't attack and it seemed like they would come back from Paraguay with a draw. But in a classic Alianza move, they got distracted in the last ball of the game and they conceded. Now these two clubs who share a lot of history between each other have to face off, and at home I trust that Colo-Colo will be the one to pick up the win over Alianza Lima. Barcelona had a pretty electric start against Talleres. They pressed up well, forcing a mistake from the Argentinian team that allowed them to score the first goal. However, they fell asleep at the wheel and Talleres was able to equalize right before half-time. Luckily they regained the lead early into the second half and everything seemed to be going fine, but then they conceded in the last ball of the game. Again! Meanwhile, Sao Paulo dominated their game against Cobresal but couldn't score. Luckily, after a great cross from James Rodriguez, a simple touch by Caleri allowed Andrés Silva to score the opener in the 82nd minute. Caleri killed off the game 6 minutes later, and that means that Sao Paulo is now on the board. Barcelona have been playing well to their credit, but they just don't know how to close out games. And I feel like in this one they'll let it slip once again, and it will end in a draw. Cobresal did their best against Sao Paulo. They parked the bus and it seemed like they would escape from Brazil with a draw, but in the last few minutes of the game Sao Paulo managed to find a breakthrough. Talleres meanwhile were trailing against Barcelona in 2 different occasions, but they managed to pick themselves back up and found an equalizer in the last ball of the game through a set piece, and that got them an important point in Ecuador. And seeing how limited this Cobresal team is, who doesn't even cut it in the Chilean league, I'm gonna have to give the win to Talleres. Huachipato had a historic night in Porto Alegre. Loyola and Montes scored 2 absolute golazos, and the Chilean team could have even scored a third, as Gremio had to make a goal line clearance in the second half. The Chilean champions hit hard when they had to, and held onto that lead for dear life. No matter what Gremio threw at them, they were always stopped either by offside traps, the goalkeeper Parra, and even the woodwork, which makes Huachipato's win even more heroic and sees them top of the group as it stands. The strongest could have been top, because even while being down to 10 men early into the game, they were leading against Estudiantes thanks to a great goal by Ribeiro, but being a man down was a bit too difficult for the sea-level merchants and Estudiantes began to attack more and more. Goalkeeper Vizcarra was keeping the strongest in the game, but it wasn't gonna last forever and eventually Estudiantes made the comeback. This one is really hard to call because we know the strongest aren't, well, the strongest away from home, and Huachipato are gonna come really motivated after their historic win. However, I'm gonna predict a draw, because I feel like the strongest individual quality can push them to a result in this game, and that Huachipato may become a bit compliant after their win. Estudiantes was losing against the strongest at home despite being up a man since the 8th minute. They were pushing the Bolivians, but they weren't creating any notable chances. However, in the second half the goals finally arrived, thanks mainly to Colombian winger Cetre, who got a goal and an assist on the day and managed to save the game for Estudiantes. Unlike Gremio, who couldn't save anything. They created a plethora of chances against Huachipato, but because of 2 golazos from outside the box they were trailing at home. And no matter how many times they tried, nobody seemed to know how to score. Kinda reminds me of someone. And now they gotta travel to Argentina, and I've seen this movie 1,000,000 times. Estudiantes are gonna be the most dominant side of the two, but they let it slip once again, and the resurrection of Gremio in this group is gonna begin with a draw in this game. Botafogo extend their losing streak. They showed sparks of good football but were overall dominated by Liga de Quito, who only beat them 1-0, but it could have been more. And now they played at home against Universitario, who went over to Barranquilla and made the game very awkward for Junior, especially after Aldo Corso scored from a set piece. Universitario dominated, but they got distracted and allowed Carlos Vaca to slide in a pass for Caicedo to score the equalizer for Junior. In the second half the teams traded blows, but no breakthrough was found. Still, it was a great result for Universitario, who got a point on the road, and now they'll have to visit Botafogo, and I wanna believe that the Brazilian team has the quality to win this game, but they've looked so bad and this Universitario team looks really disruptive, so I think this one is gonna be a draw as well. Junior was a completely different team to what we saw against Botafogo. The Colombian team had many doubts and quickly their game against Universitario became a ping-pong match. They could have won, yes, but just as easily they could have lost this game. Liga de Quito, on the other hand, improved on their performance from Matchday 1. They dominated Botafogo but only managed to score once, keeping the game tense until the end. Luckily they won, but Liga still don't convince me in their capacity to close out games. Which is why, yes, I think this one is gonna be a draw. Palestino, by some miracle of the gods, was only missing 1-0 against Flamengo at half-time, and in the second half through some set pieces they could have equalized, but it wasn't meant to be, and Leo Ortiz scored a second for El Mengao. Millonarios, through 2 defensive mistakes, were already losing 2-0 in Bolivia by the 10th minute. Luckily for them, Rocha, Bolivar's right back, decided to do his best Karate Kid impression and got sent off. You would think Millonarios would grow into the game now, but instead they conceded a third. However, right before half-time, Castro got one back for the Colombians, and he also scored a penalty in the second half, making the game 3-2. And it looked like Millonarios would pull off the comeback, but they missed all of their chances after that and they came back from Bolivia empty-handed. I do think that Millonarios is a better team, but something tells me that Palestino will have some shame and at least they will compete at home. So, I'm gonna predict another draw. Bolivar had everything under control against Millonarios. They were winning 2-0 10 minutes in, and it looked like a demolition was underway. However, their right back got sent off in the stupidest manner, and even though Savio scored a third for the Bolivian team, they were very close to throwing it all away. Luckily for them, Millonarios was only able to score 2, and so Bolivar got all 3 points at home that are mandatory for every Bolivian team in this competition. Especially cause now they'll have to host Flamengo. In the first half they dominated Palestino, but were having some trouble finding a breakthrough, until Pedro scored from a rebound like a true striker. In the second half they got a few scares through set pieces, but Rossi was able to keep them in the game, and from a corner Leo Ortiz sealed the 2-0 win. And now we have a true banger. Bolivar is in great form and Flamengo has an amazing team, but Brazilian teams don't have a great record playing in the altitude, so I'm gonna predict Bolivar to start off their campaign 3-3 and get the win in this game. Independiente del Valle reminded everyone of the great team they are. Fantastic performance from starboy Kendry Páez, who won the penalty for the first goal against San Lorenzo, and before the end of the first half they got a second. However, this time Independiente del Valle didn't allow the opposing team to do anything, and in the second half they dominated possession and they should have even scored more goals. Dominant performance from IDV, who will now have to host Palmeiras, who looked like they got themselves into trouble after Liverpool scored early into the game, but they didn't get desperate. They took over and they responded with 3 goals of their own, including one from their own teenager, Estevao. This should be an exciting end-to-end game. Both teams play great football and both teams have young talent to follow closely in the future. This one I'm gonna say will end in a draw, but I feel like both teams have arguments to claim the win on this one. Liverpool were leading against Palmeiras in Brazil after a great shot from Luciano Rodriguez was poorly cleared by Weberton, and Rosso scored the rebound. However, the Uruguayan team could not perform a miracle as their defense could do nothing against the onslaught of Palmeiras. San Lorenzo didn't concede 3, but they easily could have, as they traveled to Quito and were quickly erased from the pitch by Kendry Páez and the rest of Independiente del Valle. The team from Argentina barely created any chances and was exposed defensively, which finally led to the sacking of their coach Insúa, which is why I think they are gonna win, as I'm a believer of the honeymoon phase of managers and how players will suddenly start trying harder to earn a spot in the team, so I will give the win to San Lorenzo. Atlético Mineiro played a great first half against Rosario Central. They dominated both areas and scored through Scarpa after a great cross from Hulki. However, in the second half they allowed Central back into the game and conceded an equalizer with only 15 minutes to go. But luckily for them, they regained the lead almost immediately thanks to Paulinho. Rosario Central were very close to getting a second equalizer, but Atlético Mineiro, with some help from the officials, managed to hold on to the result and get all 3 points. Similar to Peñarol, who destroyed Caracas 5-0. Which is obviously massive for their goal difference. There was only one team on the pitch. There's not much to talk about, but just congratulate Peñarol for their win, especially Silvera, who got a hat-trick. But Mineiro is a completely different team, especially playing at home, so I'm gonna give the win to Mineiro and their individual quality. Oh my... Caracas, Caracas! Was dismembered, violated, thrashed, stomped and trampled over by Peñarol 5-0. They've already conceded 9 goals in 2 games and they are on good pace to complete their speed run out of the tournament. And their next stop is against Rosario Central, who did nothing in the first half against Mineiro, but in the second half they deservedly got an equalizer. However, they conceded again right after. They continued to push, but they kept missing their chances, and near the end of the game the referee and VAR denied Rosario Central a penalty when Jemerson elbowed Facundo Mayo inside the box, and so Rosario Central lost a game in which they probably deserved a bit more. Luckily, now they have to play against Caracas, and seeing how the Venezuelan team is performing, I can see nothing but a Rosario Central win. Libertad finally showed why they are the Paraguayan champions. They dismantled a poor Deportivo Táchira team who didn't even know where they were standing, sending them back to Venezuela with a 3-0 defeat. Meanwhile, River took care of business at home. They always looked in control against Nacional, and it only took a bit of magic from their wonder kid Claudio Echeverri, who scored an absolute banger. Nacional did have some chances to equalize, but Nigerian striker Osinachi Evere was not on his day as he missed 3 sitters, and River closed it out with a late goal from Colidio, making it 2-0. And yes, Libertad looked great, but against a pushover team, and I'm done doubting River Plate. They've shown that when they step on the gas, they win, like they'll do against Libertad in Paraguay. Nacional suffered in the Monumental. It looked like they were conceding any moment, and it finally came through Echeverri with a golazo. After that, they began pushing for an equalizer with more grit than good football, but they kept missing chance after chance. Especially Evere, who couldn't even figure out where the goal was. They conceded late to Colidio when they were more worried about protesting about a handball than marking their men. But at least they did more than Táchira, who at the start tried a bit from outside the box, but the game was completely over the moment they conceded, and simply submitted to the onslaught from Libertad. And now, having to travel to Uruguay, I don't think it'll be a different story. The team from Venezuela has yet to score and has already conceded 5 goals in 2 games, so not only I expect Nacional to win, I expect them to thrash Deportivo Táchira, because they have to improve their goal difference if they wanna compete with the other teams in this group, so I expect this to be an easy win for El Bolso. And now looking back at my predictions, this match day I did a lot better as I got 11 results right and only 5 incorrect, bringing the total score 18 to 14. Hopefully I can continue my positive streak because it's very tight. Anyway, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Remember to like, subscribe for more videos like this, and comment down below your predictions. I'll be seeing you guys next time.